throws before me an intimacy, or strikes me with an intimacy that comes upon me in my own intimacy, through sight, through hearing, or through the very meaning of words. In effect, the image is not only visual, it is also musical, poetic, and also tactile, olfactive, or gustative. I won't try to translate that. It's gustative. It comes by taste. Kinesthetic, and so forth. So he suggests there can be such a thing as an image and cuisine. Now, when one goes to his definition of image, it is, I have to confess, I'm not sure this is some of his strongest thinking about art. I'm not always convinced by what he has to say about the image, but he suggests that the image occurs when a thing is presented in its, as he puts it, in its resemblance to itself. When this resemblance starts to appear, the thing's sameness, its memete starts to come forth and is presented as such. And this is the emergence of the image. As I was just starting to read, it seems to me that this is something that goes on actually quite insistently in Adrià's cooking. So the thing is presented in what Jean-Luc calls its sameness. And that is to say, in a certain resemblance and even dissemblance with itself. It comes forth as itself, but resembling itself in a way that seems to almost detach itself from itself. And in that movement, the thing is given en image. There's always, in fact, in the presentation of one of Adrià's dishes, a play of mimesis, an engagement of the two forms of withdrawal or veiling that Heidegger recognizes in speaking of the presentation that is proper to art. Jean-Luc places the accent on the first of these forms, that is the reserve of the presentation, the way in which presentation always involves a retreat, a reserve. And it's in that very retrait, that reserve, that the thing comes forward to us in its distinction, as he puts it. The image strikes us or comes upon us, brings us this intimacy of a fond, as he says, of a ground, because it detaches itself by a play of traits, by a play of the trace. So the thing is, in a certain sense, as it comes forth in its sameness, it is its sameness over against us in a certain detachment from us, in a certain distinction from us. So it's a play of approach and withdrawal, distinction, and also a coming upon us. Heidegger, this is very close to what Heidegger has to say about the way art works. But when Heidegger takes up the topic of resemblance and dissemblance, in other words, when he starts talking about mimesis, he emphasizes that there are two forms of dissemblance. As I said, Nancy tends to emphasize the first, that is the withdrawal of the thing presented, so that, you remember Heidegger says, when this hits us, we can say of the thing no more than that it is, rather than not. That's the distinction that Nancy is talking about. But Heidegger adds, and those of you who are with me reading the origin of the work of art right now will remember that there are two forms of dissemblance in Heidegger. And the second involves a play of dissemblance whereby one can't even tell whether the withdrawal that we have just evoked is happening or whether it's just a play of similitude and actually a misleading dissemblance. Adrià plays with both of these. So let me return to my text. This second form, second form of Verstellung is equally accented and explored by Adrià. This dissemblance, the Verstellung that is irreducible in all play of distinction in art, makes the work of art. I think it gives it that ambiguity, it gives it that opacity that Heidegger is trying to think, and which is proper to mimesis. And as Heidegger tells us, one never knows in art whether one is dealing with the one form of dissemblance or the other, or both. Withdrawal withdraws, and it remarks itself, or as it remarks itself or makes itself remarked, it dissimulates itself. Sometimes Adrià will seek to present the essence of the thing in some form of resemblance to itself, in the sense of the image that Nancy describes. And this is the case with the pea. Do you have the picture, Alejo, of the pea? Or if you can find it, just stick it up. Okay. That's one of his chefs. There, in the middle. That's the pea. Here's a case where Adrià offers us a pea. In fact, it's a gelatinized globule which contains within it the essence of pea. Of course, it's bigger than a pea. You know, it's a presentation of the pea. You know, the essence of the pea. And of course, it's entirely reworked and given to us in this estranged form on this spoon that Adrià invented for the purpose. Sorry. So, in the case of the pea, we have an essence of the thing presented in some form of resemblance to itself. And presented, as I said, under the form of a gelatinized globule, which contains an exquisite essence of pea. And one finds the same play at work in the case of a dish that contains the bone of a fish, accompanied by a little shot glass, which contains the essence of the fish in a liquid form. And there you can see Adrià playing with Brillat-Savarin's notion of an essence, which is always in the form of a juice in Brillat-Savarin. So that you get the bone, which you're supposed to eat first, and then you sip the shot glass with the essence of fish, and you see a little bit of Adrià's alchemy. But here he's trying to give us something of the essence of fish. As I think Brillat-Savarin would actually love this. In the case of the mummified fish, on the other hand, which is another dish, we don't have a picture of that, one is already dealing with something quite different that recalls what Salvatore Puglia, our friend, has called the third death of the fish. I won't go into that, a Lacanian reference there. We could pass over many celebrated dishes in this manner. But I also want to emphasize this other dimension of Feststellung, because Adrià will frequently present a taste essence under a false guise, as in the case of his melon caviar. I'm citing dishes that I tasted in 2003. There are hundreds of others like this. And the case of his melon caviar, which is served in Russian caviar tins. It's actually melon. In fact, Adrià pushes an entire alchemy of the essence and a commentary on alchemy itself. And again, always playing, and I think the humor is absolutely critical here, playing with this dimension of dissemblance that's involved in the presentation of an essence. When the essence is presented in its self as such, in art, as Heidegger would say, there is both this distinction that occurs, as Nancy says, but also this Feststellung, this dissemblance. In each case, there is entry into, let's call it a savory world. Nancy says that in the image we touch upon the threshold of a world. In each case, there is a savory world, entry into a savory world by way of a penetration and in an infusion. Remember, Nancy says the intimacy of the image comes upon us, and it touches our own intimacy, and this is what he calls the methexis, this participation. So there's an entry into a savory world by way of a penetration and an infusion through which the palate will become the site of a kind of writing, according to Nancy. I won't cite passages, but Nancy says there's a kind of, that taste involves the taking of a kind of imprint and a sort of a writing of sensibility. Adrià will add that a sixth sense is stirred when one touches something of the land, or what they call in the study of wine, the terroir, and the very sense of the world, what Nancy calls the sense of the world. So I'll return to this. This is, in other words, Adrià's sixth sense, as he calls it. I have to come back to this because I must